So the Philadelphia 76ers season ends in yet another disappointing loss. After losing in round 2 to the Miami Heat in 6 games, if you're connected at all to Sixers Twitter, Sixers Reddit, anything, it's not hard to see that the fan base is very divided on many issues. It's not a new concept, it's not unique to this team at all, but after a roller coaster of a season that had an all-star player quitting on the team, the emergence of Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid's MVP level play, and probably the weirdest trade in NBA history, two questions are on everybody's mind. Who's really to blame for the Sixers' failures, and what do they do going forward? Before we get into answering these questions, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. To any new listeners, I'm still very new myself, still finding my identity, but you're going to want to be an OG, so please subscribe. Thank you to all who have been rocking with me anyway. And to show my appreciation, I'm responding to all comments on this video at any time. So like the video, ask me anything. Doesn't even have to be basketball related. It can be about just life in general. All right, let's get into it. Who's to blame for the Sixers' ultimate failure? Since the unofficial start of the process in 2013-2014, the Sixers have had very little to show for their strategy to acquire as many assets as possible to set them up for future success. They made the playoffs 5 times since then, never getting further than the second round. And in a sense, the process actually worked. The goal was to get so many high draft picks that eventually at least a couple of them would pan out to be, franchise players, and then go on to mature and grow together for long-term success. And the Sixers had an MVP caliber player and 2 number 1 picks on the same roster, not to mention other star caliber players who were acquired to support that young cast, like Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris and a few others. A few notable mistakes kind of bookmark some of the franchise-altering decisions. Every year for the Sixers, there seems to be a new guy who gets the lion's share of the blame. First, it seemed like it was Brett Brown, then it was Jerry Colangelo, then it was Elton Brand. Last year after the Hawks series, it was Doc Rivers, and now this year, it was Ben Simmons, Doc Rivers again, and then eventually James Harden. As a Sixers fan myself, I blamed a ton of the Sixers' failures on different things throughout the season. Mostly Simmons, obviously, but I also thought our bench was weak. I thought Tobias wasn't playing up to his contract. I thought Doc Rivers made a ton of questionable decisions, and we all saw James Harden drop 0 points in the second half of an elimination game. But you know what? Rarely did I blame Joel Embiid. And it was because he was so clearly the greatest aspect of this season, of this entire franchise at that any points of criticism just seem petty when you consider the fact that the Sixers are pretty much nothing without him. But I bring up different coaches, GMs, star players, all that because they all point to the main problem with the 76ers, which is leadership. Something about their culture is creating this environment where messages aren't being received in the right way. Jimmy Butler clearly had issues with the Sixers leadership and left despite claiming that he still wishes to play with Joel Embiid.
Yes. I still wish I was on this team. I definitely love the Miami Heat, though, man. I'm glad that I'm here, but I got so much respect and love for Joel Embiid.
Ben Simmons felt it was too toxic to even show up to work, and when it comes to these playoffs, the team just seemed like they quit to the point where the coach literally had to beg his guys to actually try hard in a home elimination game.
Come on, guys. Fight for this. Fight for this.
Like talking to a wall. By that moment, they had clearly already checked out. No amount of coaching could even save them at that point. But now we have to talk about the star players. So when James Harden first arrived in Philly, he was humble, he was hungry, and he seemed committed to doing whatever this team needed to win. But he also said this.
Listen here, they have something great already going on. I'm just here to contribute.
Actually, James, this team needs much more than that. They need you as a leader. And being a leader is earned and not given. So while you come to the team with everyone's respect, purely out of what you've done in Houston and Brooklyn and your resume to date, your inability to do what you sought out to do, capped off by a very lackluster effort in these last 2 losses to the Heat, won't get the most out of the guys who have respect for you. But why do the Sixers need James Harden to be a leader? They have Joel Embiid, right? Well, as you may know, Embiid has a very unique leadership style. He leads by example for sure. Dude played with a broken face and a concussion and with a mask on. It's improving every single year. He bounces back from injury. He gets the crowd involved during the games. But when it comes to off-the-court leadership, there's what I consider a pretty concerning dynamic. Look, Joel is very honest. He's probably too honest, and he's proven that he won't hold back on making public comments, calling out his teammates, coaches, and front office. And I don't really have a problem with this, especially since he always makes sure to point to himself and his performance at the end of the day, even if it does kind of feel like more of an aside at times. My problem with Embiid's leadership is that he seems to have found a very comfortable role as simply being the team's on-court leader, while deferring to Tobias Harris for more of the off-court leadership stuff.
Just being able for him to kind of allow himself to go out there and dominate, allow me to be that voice for the team a little bit in different times. That's kind of like how we do have that type of partnership. I could get on Joel and help him pick up his energy sometime to help this group. So I feed off of his energy on an offensive end as well, and how he goes, the team goes as well.
So wait, I'm confused. If Tobias feeds off Joel and Joel defers to Tobias as the voice of the players, and then Harden is somewhere else just here to contribute to this already great system, who's the leader? And more than anything, what kind of culture is this setting? We all know that there's this culture of calling people out publicly on this team, and now all of a sudden there seems to be this game of hot potato of people passing around the blame without actually having to accept full accountability. Everybody on this team should have felt personally responsible for their blowout loss in Game 5, but due to this culture this team has, players and coaches can find solace in the fact that, oh, it was us, we didn't get it done. And that's sneaky, because yes, it's true and it's honest, but it's not the kind of leadership and culture that championship teams have. And as a result, they came right back in Game 6 with no personal accountability, the same exact mentality, and got punked by Jimmy Butler and Max Strus on their home court. This is probably why Ben Simmons wanted out. He believed that, this unwritten agreement they all had to share the blame as a whole was violated when he was getting most of the blame for their loss to Atlanta. So he was like, screw this, I'm out. So how do the Sixers move on from here? Well, they need to do some soul searching. Because I can tell you, while this Sixers roster was not perfect, they had enough to win a championship. So here are the top 3 things that need to happen. First, a couple honorable mentions. First is Doc Rivers. But I'm not expecting much else from an older coach who's pretty stuck in his ways. And I'm honestly just so tired of blaming Doc Rivers. I've done it all season. I'm just too exhausted. So I'm going to try and focus more on the product on the court. The other honorable mention is Tyrese Maxey. Maxey exceeded all expectations this year. He was one of the few Sixers to actually try hard up until the very end. But his continued growth into another star in this team is a huge X factor for this team's ceiling. But he's still a young guy, so we'll just need to be patient. Now on to the actual list. Number 3, this roster needs toughness. You got to go out and get you some dogs, okay? Like Patrick Beverley, PJ Tucker. How about even like a young, hungry guy who's trying to prove his place in the league or something like that? The Heat always seem to find guys like that. I just feel like this team, they need some table flippers in that locker room. You know what I'm saying? Like guys who legit get pissed off after a bad loss. I would bet anything that after these L's that the Sixers took, the locker room is just quiet and very awkward. Number 2, James Harden needs to become a servant leader. Okay, no one is expecting Houston James Harden anymore. And as justified as you may be for trying to, make the right basketball play or just taking what the defense gives you, your effort can never be in question again. You better not go out without a fight. You got to bring the same fire whether you're dropping 30 points in Game 4 or dropping 11 points in a playoff game. His legacy is on the line here, and the young guys are looking up to you. And Embiid needs you. You also got to take way less than the max contract, because if you do take it, it'll screw the organization for years to come. And number 1, Embiid needs to continue to evolve as a leader. Like I said earlier, it just feels unfair to call him out on pretty much anything, because Embiid is so much more mature than when he first entered the league. But like Tobias said, this team moves as he moves. I want to see Joel leading a timeout. I want to see him going out of his way to defend a teammate once in a while, even if it means not being brutally honest to the reporters. And always staying mindful of your body language and how every little thing you do is amplified in the eyes of the team. And take advantage, take on that challenge of being the team's off-court leader, because that would do wonders for this team's culture as a whole. But I love you, Joel. You still my MVP. So it's been a very long, stressful year for the 76ers, and they have some very important decisions to make this offseason. They struck out on many opportunities in the past, and that championship window that the process created many years ago is closing right before our very eyes. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to drop a comment down below. We've reached an incredible milestone in this channel, and I just want to show some love back to you. Ask me anything, Sixers, playoffs, life, anything within YouTube's guidelines. I'm going to holla at you. See you on the next one.